We'll start by adding the extension onto section 5 and the porch base onto section 6. Now both of these will get glued on while the building is in an upright position because they sit flat on the surface. But I'm just going to show you where they go with the building this way. Now the extension just gets centered left to right. The slopey side is up at the top. And I'll just use a generous amount of wet glue to put that on and hold it until that glue is grabbed. And then over here on section 6, we have our porch base. The side with decorative paper will face out. On the long side, we have decorative paper on the two ends. And it gets centered left to right. There should be about a 1/16 of an inch too little on the left and the right side. And again, I'll put a generous amount of wet glue on there and hold that in place. So they're going to go on like so. So I'll go ahead and get those glued on and allow that to thoroughly dry before I go on to the next step. Next we'll add the front steps and the front door. And when the steps go on, they get attached here to section 2. And again, we'll do this with the building standing up. I'm just showing you where they go. And to do that, you'll want to open it up so that you have 90 degrees between section 2 and section 3. And then when you glue the steps on to section 2, make sure you have them tight up against section 3 because there isn't any room to spare here on the front of section 2. So just have them tight up against section 3, but you'll only put glue on the back side of the steps here. So go ahead and put glue on there and allow those to thoroughly dry. Once the steps are thoroughly dry, we can add the door, and it just gets centered on the steps and right on top of them. We previously put some score tape around the outside, but I'm also going to run just a little bead of glue right inside of that score tape just as extra insurance. And then I'll just attach that on. And there's the door attached. Before we can attach the dormer to section 1, we need to put the roof on section 2. So I've started out here, this is just a scrap of medium weight chipboard, and I'm going to draw a circle that is 1 3/8 and then cut out that circle. And in order to cut out circles accurately, if you first cut out roughly about 1/8 of an inch around, then you'll be able to cut more easily exactly on that circle shape. So I'll go ahead and do that. Once I have that circle cut, I'm going to cut it in half. And then I'll take each half and I'll glue each half to the inside of the curved roof on section 2, and that's just going to give us a little extra gluing space. Make sure that that edge is even all around. There's probably going to be a little space right underneath the edge of the circle. Now for the roof itself, there are 2 pieces of lightweight chipboard, and I apologize if we've already done this, I can't recall. And one piece, the under roof, is slightly smaller than the upper roof. And both of them, we'll take them to our scoreboard and we'll score the under roof every 1/8 of an inch and I've got the 2.5 side up here at the top. And then for the upper roof, I've got the 2 5/8 inch side up at the top. I'll start my scoring at 1/4 of an inch, and then I will score every 1/8 of an inch. Now we're going to glue these two pieces together, but before I do, I'm going to take my black marker around all of the edges, both on the top and the bottom, and the actual edge on both pieces. And even though we're going to glue them together, sometimes glue gets on the edge and you're not able to blacken it with your marker if there's dried glue. So I think it's just better to go ahead and do the black marker first. Now that I have the edges blackened on each piece, I'm just going to encourage them to start curving. Just a little bit. And then on the upper roof, I'm going to prep the underside with 2 strips of score tape. And let's just do a little dry fit here. If we put them together, because we cut the under roof shorter than the upper roof, if we want these edges to match up, which we do, we naturally have to have a curve in order to do that. And so I'm just going to put some wet glue on the inside here and then use these. I'll start with the one end on the upper and get it attached, and then curve around and make sure that all my 2 long edges, actually all the edges, end up being flush. So now we have a little unit like this. And I'm actually on the end that has, on the top, the scoring just started 1/4 of an inch in. On the underside, I'm going to make sure that I've blackened back for 3/8 of an inch. That's the overhang, and I don't think it'll show, but I'd just rather be safe than sorry. And so, like I said, that's the overhang, this side that doesn't have scoring in that last 1/8 of an inch. That's going to go towards the front. And here I have my setup so the inside with the niches is facing me. And then recall that we have this little tab to help us join the roof on. There is an edge of medium weight chipboard here that's 1/16 of an inch thick. And now that we've put these 2 pieces of lightweight chipboard together, the edge here is 1/16 of an inch thick. And then we've got these 2 curves that we've beefed up with an additional piece of chipboard. And our roof will fit, we'll put glue on that long ridge of 1/16 inch chipboard here, and then on the 2 curved sides. I'm just doing a little dry fit here, and then it will fit exactly side to side here. The tab, the tab will come up and join. So we'll have glue join and we'll have this tab. So that's how we'll put this on. I'll probably just glue first and then put the tab on. So run glue on the curved edges and along this edge on the back here. So I have my glue on, and I'll start with, here's my overhang, it's going towards the front. So I'll make sure I'm lining it up exactly left to right there and putting that all the way down, and then working my way around. And I'll look at it side to side here and then put some good pressure on it to hold it in place. And you can put that tab up as soon as you feel like you can let go. So there's the little roof installed, and I'm going to wait to put the decorative paper on it. So now that I have the roof on section 2 installed, I can put the dormer for section 1 on, and we just want to make sure that it doesn't go too low so that it bumps into that roof. So I'm going to keep mine up about here, and I'll measure it in a second. There's still, you can see, I think there, that there's a good gap to the dormer, so it's not going to run into that. And now I'll take a measurement of that. So I measured this distance on both sides from the ridge line on section 1 to the ridge on the dormer, and I have a 1/2 inch. So I am going to, you can put a couple little tick marks or a line. Actually, you can just draw a little line there because the roof for that dormer will cover it up. So I'm going to remove the dormer and draw 2 little lines that are a 1/2 inch away from this edge here, and then I can use those as guidelines and center the dormer left and right and put it on with a little wet glue and allow that to set up and dry. So I've actually put the building in this orientation to glue on this dormer. I'm supporting it with a 3-inch block, actually 2 of them behind here. You could put anything in there that can hold this level, and then I put my glue on and I'll allow that to thoroughly dry. To attach the dormers and other external parts on the remaining sections, I'm starting over here on the left, and we'll work on these 4 sections first. To support section 7, I've got something that's 2 inches tall underneath here. In my case, it's 2 of my steel blocks, and that keeps this section level. Everything else here is flat on the table. Now I've made some little measuring guides for myself just out of cardstock, and the little bay window is going to go 1.25 inches up from the bottom edge. The roof for the porch is going to go 2 3/4 up from the top of the base. If you might have a window here, I have this little emblem. I'm going to bring it 1 inch up from the bottom. And then this little window, it'll probably be, it's more centered here, but maybe slightly above because we want to allow room for this roof to come in, but it's not critical. And then on the tower, the little windows just go exactly around those openings. So I'll do these 4 sections. I'm going to let the porch roof thoroughly dry, and once it's thoroughly dry, I can put some glue on the back of the dormer that goes above it and bring it down right on top of that roof. Now I'm looking at sections 3, 2, and 1, and on section 3 I've made a little 3/4 inch spacer to put this dormer on with, and then to put this window on up here, measure 7.5 inches from the very bottom, and that will be where that window goes. We have to have it a little bit higher here because section 5 comes in and it comes up to about here, so that's why this window is up a little bit higher. And then inside of these little inset niches, we have 2 windows that can just get put in centered, and for the rectangular one, make sure you get the writing, if you're using the same directional paper that I was, make sure the writing is facing the correct direction. So I'll go ahead and get those 4 elements attached. Now I've turned the building on the side so I can put this last dormer on building 3, and it's not very stable, so just support it when you put this one on. And again, I'm using my 3/4 inch rule here so that it will be at the same level as the dormer that's on this side that I'm pointing to. And then I'll finish up by putting the remaining windows around section 4. Two sections of the house get porch railings. One comes on this corner on section 3, and the other one comes around this little porch base that is on section 6. And I've added a section of medium weight chipboard on the top of the 3rd page of cutting instructions, and it tells all the pieces that you need for the sides and the tops for this. Now the first thing I'm going to do is stand this up and put the porch floor onto section 6. It goes side to side. It should not come over the edges of section 6 because it is sized to fit exactly on here. So I'll just put a little glue. I'll stand this up and I'll put some glue on that and let that dry. So while that is drying, I'm going to do a little prep work on the sides, and the first pieces I have here are the 4 that are for section 3. And I'm going to glue them up in sets of 2. And then over here I have 2 that are longer and 4 that are shorter. And again, I'm going to glue these up in sets of 2. And these go for section 6. Next, I'll put some decorative paper on these pieces, and I've selected these little ghosts for the railings on section 3, and this, I think it's called houndstooth. It's a kind of a check pattern to go on the railings for section 6, and we'll cut them an 1/8 inch shorter than the pieces. So for section 3 they're 5/8 by 2 1/4, and we need 2 of those. And for section 6, the long section is 5/8 by 2 5/8, and we need just 1 of that. And for the little ones, they're 5/8 by 7/8, and of course we need 2 of those. So I'll go ahead and cut those and ink them and then install them with a 1/16 of an inch reveal all around their edges. So here are my pieces of chipboard with their decorative paper, and I'm just going to put those aside for now. Now we're going to start by working on the porch that is on section 3, and I have here a piece of 1/8 inch dowel, and I'm just going to, on the very tip, the last 1/8 inch, I'll take my craft knife and kind of whittle that to a little point down there at the end. Now I have kind of a point there, and I'm going to stick that point up pretty snugly into the roof, and I'm going to measure how long it needs to be to come to the top of the floor. And it's okay to cut it off a little bit long because you can always sand it down a little bit, but you want to have a pretty snug fit. So I'm holding it very firmly in here. I'm not forcing anything out of alignment, but I'm holding it pretty firmly in there so I'll end up with a nice snug fit. So I'll mark that, and then with my little X-Acto saw and miter kit, I'll cut that off. So here's my column. It's a nice snug fit, but not forcing anything out of joint. And I'm going to pull that out, and I'll use my black marker to make that into a black piece of dowel. So when we install this railing, it's going to come really close to the edge of that pattern paper. And I don't want to see a little bit of that orange showing through. So I'm going to just take my marker just a tiny bit right on that edge, just so that I won't see any of that orange. Don't go in very far. Well, actually it won't matter because it'll be behind the railing and you won't see it. But I'm not going to go in more than a 1/16 of an inch and just take my marker along each edge of that pattern paper. Now when you glue this dowel in, it should come back a little bit past a 1/16 of an inch of this edge here, and then put it straight up into the ceiling there. And just use a little dab of glue on each end and go ahead and let that dry. And when you put that in, there should be room for the panels on either side. There'll be a little bit of a gap, and that's fine, but there should be room for the panels on either side. While the column is drying over here on section 3, we can make 2 columns to go here. Again, just kind of whittle this to a point so that you'll be able to stick it up into the porch roof there, and then cut 2 that are the length here. And then once you've got them to the right length, go ahead and take your marker and make them black. Now while my marker is drying on my columns, I'm going to again just come in a tiny bit on the edge of the pattern paper here because I don't want any of this orange to show through on the outside. Now when you put these columns in, and I've just put a piece of white paper behind here so you can see better, make sure you've left distance in between them for the 2 3/4 inch panel to fit. So just center that with that panel in there. And then for the little side panels, they should fit in here, and there can be a little extra room, but you should have enough room to fit them in. There doesn't have to be extra room, but there can be. And then just make sure that your columns are straight, and then use some glue to get them in place, and we won't move on until they're thoroughly dry. So once this column is good and dry, we can attach our sides, and you would do this with the building in an upright position, but I'm just showing it on its side here so you can see it better. We'll put glue on the bottom and on the one end that attaches to the side of the house, and glue that so that it's in line with the column. The side is just as thick as the column. And don't worry about this gap, we'll come back and take care of that in a few minutes. But again, you'll do this in an upright position and put one side on and put the other side on and let them thoroughly dry. So if you've got some downtime while things are drying, I'm cutting strips of paper to go on the tops of my railings, and for one of them I'm using this little checkered paper, and for the other one I'm using this diagonal striped. And I'll just cut strips that are 1/8 inch wide and then hold them back a 1/16 of an inch from their ends. So I'll get those prepped while I'm waiting for things to dry. Once these walls are thoroughly dry, I've cut a little piece of black cardstock. It's just slightly under 3/4 of an inch wide, and it's 1.5 inches long. And I put score tape on all but the middle 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to kind of curve it around my fingers so it makes a 90-degree bend. And I'm going to remove the score tape, and then I'll just put it inside here, and that will close off this gap between the two side rails. And then finally, for a nice finishing touch, you can run a bead of glue along the top of the sides and install your little 1/4 inch top pieces and let them thoroughly dry. So for the railings for section 6, because there's 3 parts, we're going to do it a little differently. This is my long side wall, and I've prepped it with some score tape on the back. And I've cut a piece of black cardstock that is slightly less than 3/4 of an inch tall, and it's 4 3/4 long. And I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to leave an inch tail on either end and attach the piece of black cardstock to this side rail. I'll give that a good burnish. Then I'll leave a 1/4 inch gap and put score tape on that last 3/4 of each side. And when you put the score tape on, it should go on the same side as the finished wall is on. So in section 6, I've got, make sure that their columns are thoroughly dry. Don't start this process unless they are bone dry. And I'm showing you with it on its side, and possibly for this part, the first part, you could have it on its side, but you could also stand it up. And I've got my little unit that I just made, and I'm going to put glue just on the bottom edge of the side, and then I'm going to hold it in place with some pressure onto the porch floor down here and let that thoroughly dry. Once this piece is thoroughly dried, I'm going to bend these tabs so that they're more than 90 degrees, so they'll stay kind of back out of the way when we put the little sides on. So I'm just gently, because I don't want to crease them. And then I'm also going to remove that score tape backing because it would be too hard to remove it once the side panels get in. So I'll remove the score tape backing. So that flap is back there and it's out of my way. And now I'm going to take one of my little side panels. I'll put glue on the bottom and glue on the side that will go next to the wall. And I'll expect to have a gap on this side, and I'll just hold that in place and let that thoroughly dry and repeat it on the other side. And not until they're thoroughly dry will I come back and attach these tabs. And the little walls were thoroughly dry. I reached in and attached the tabs, and now all that's left is to put the little top rails on, and I'll just run a little bead of glue along the top edge on all 3 pieces and put these on and let them thoroughly dry.